presentation, is that,
So if they share that screen, it'll go up, but then we'll lose Jessica.
okay.
Do we need to have Jess on the screen the whole time?
After the presentation, we can take it down and Jessica can participate in the discussions. I'm assuming you'll do the presentation and then you'll follow up from there.
Okay,
Yes, we can do that.
all right, let's hit the presentation. We'll see you later, guys. Won't see us at all.
It is, camera is not focused too.
Yes.
But how is that Zoom? Isn't that?
It's not soon, really.
No, it's a boardroom. There we go.
I'm here with the owner of the company, it's a radio. It was one of the partners. We did the school development group and both trading facility is here as well. You should let me know first how much time you have.
You have 50 minutes if you really want the presentation. You have about 10 minutes.
Okay. Because I want to give an overview, just to, especially, remind the board of trustees who looked at the project, in June 8th, this year. And after that, we went to the planning board in August, September, October meetings. You're looking at an image that we did, at the request of the DOT, the asked for a streetscapes. We did a 3D view of our original proposal. So I just put this up for you to take a look at it. And we also did 3D images that we had shown at the first meeting with the DOT and the planning board. And I just brought them back so you could have another look at them. I'm just going to go through quickly. So, we did these schemes for 9 units. One of them is a affordable housing portable unit. And the original design was to try to create as much view through the site. Given we have 9 units, we're allowed 18, which is not really practical for a site like this because so much of the site is just too steep and not usable. So anyway, this is one view of the development. And the idea was that a townhome that was 23 by 46 feet. It's a footprint that allows a 3-bedroom, 2-bath on the second floor and a 2-car garage in the basement. All the cars are located behind and under the units. These are just a couple of 3D views. This is another view. We took a look at that view from the southeast corner, which is closest to where Livingston Avenue and Broadway meets. We've been looking at now how we can make that view, how we can increase that view because it's so important to that and how the gate goes into the village. This is just another view for the original scheme. We were trying to create views between the buildings and down the driveway. This is another view looking this way. We can see down the driveway, which is just not just going to happen because it happens to be the entrance to the site. Looking down, you can see the townhouses and how they compare a lot of buildings around it. There's a big diversity and the size and shape and style of a lot of the buildings in the area. There's 1, 2, 3 family houses, and then the Ginsburg development is down the road, and on the other side we have the Green. This is looking from the river, looking up at the development. So since we did our view studies, we went, we've looked at different ideas for laying out the units. This is a very simple layout shown on our original plan. We had all the units parallel to the north and south property lines because that way we felt the maximum between the units and just as was shown in the 3D model. I have this area in yellow because this is something that is very important for everyone to understand. This corner of the site, there's a lot of really challenging engineering issues, and I'm going to let Paul Petretti, the engineer, describe what that entails. So we're trying to stay away from that corridor when we do any construction. And so we did look at the different schemes. This is 6 in front and 3 in the back. The more we push the unit to the more it enters that danger zone, where we really can't do any construction. So this unit, this is allowed showing 5 in the front, 4 in the back. We actually really, thought about the comments from the planning board, and I think we all decided that we could make the units parallel to the street because of the contiguous street wall. So that's why we're looking at these schemes. And this one is also 6 in the front, 3 in the back, just turned another way to see if that would make any difference. But all of these schemes are trying to push the 3 in the back north, which really is a problem because of that building that box up in the northwest corner. So these are just the unit layouts. I just have a condensed version of the architectural drawings just to touch on that. Each footprint is, each floor is just over 1,000 square feet. So 2 floors is 2,000 plus there's additional square footage in the half story above and the basement. So some units are 3,000 square feet. And we've been playing with different elevations that we haven't really, we haven't gotten into too much detail yet because we're still looking at still trying to determine the layout of the units. Now I'm going to show you the engineering drawings. This is a project that has to be a really strong collaboration between an architect and civil engineer because of the challenges of the site. We have still a tremendous amount of fill. We have the county sewer line. We have easements to consider. We have access from this driveway to the property and sewer. So I just wanted Paul Trey to describe, why this is becoming, this is something that is challenging if we want to move the units around. Okay, that's right. Big wanted to talk about first.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I apologize for my voice. My name is Victor Riccio, and I'm the principal of Let Me Stand Development Group. Turn this on. So, I've known friends and, was in the pulp trading for the years, last 30
Can you
years.
speak into the microphone, please? I really can't hear you.
Raise it.
Raise it over your head. That would be helpful. Thank you.
I can break out into a Bruce Springsteen song. Okay, so, during the course of the last 13 years, when we purchased the property 13 years ago, and we've tried to present a few different things to the planning board, and just didn't work. So I think this time around we got a real good shot at it. We had a nice conversation with Anthony Holmberry, and we gave us some ideas. And I think forward to so we can talk about that. Which is looking at this drawing. There's been 3 issues that the planning board has been struggling with, which is the view corridor, one of which is the turnaround for the fire department, and one of which is the we call it the black box. There it is. So let's speak about the turnarounds. We're able to get certificate that allowed us to eliminate the turnaround. We would also potentially eliminate the hammerhead. We may be able to do it just on the pavement that is going to install as part of the project anyway. So that looks like it can be potentially going away. Second issue was the black box. Paul and I have done a lot of work together when it comes to retaining walls and sheeting and shoring, driving piles. I've been that type of contractor for 55 years. So, when we started looking at the moorings, we realized the moorings are very old, maybe 50 years old, so that gives you a good indication of how long the material is really. There's a lot of debris, a lot of boulders, and a lot of stuff that would be really difficult for you to try to piles. I don't know if any of you have ever seen that operation, but you try to big steel pipe into the ground until it creates enough friction to support a building. If in fact you get an obstruction on the way, you have to dig down, remove that obstruction, pull the pile and start again. And when you put on soil like this, and you also have the moorings, so you know ahead of time that's not going to work. So pile driving was negative. we got the camera, Smile is what it is. The no Polish is learning to design the foundations. And think about that. It's the last things of view corridors, which I know is particular, is of particular interest to the board, so. Really. Stina Street, whatever you look at, we created one living area up there at the driveway. That's the right line that extends out. Christine may show you that, but she has a line going across the Hudson River. The blue line is the secondary platform. The local part of the faith will be entering onto community's property. Had a nice telephone call today with the what's it called, the director of facilities. And we agreed to meet tomorrow to discuss cleaning up this side of the project. There's some scrubby with brush there, with the fence building. I'd like to take that down. He seems to be very amenable to that. We also talked about how we would coexist as neighbors. Because it's a tight site and we don't want to cause them any problems. So I'm meeting with that gentleman tomorrow. And like I said, he sounds amenable to many of our ideas. Last. There's only 2 new corridors, or is there 3? I'm not sure.
And that's same to those two.
Okay, so, one of the great speakers from the end right there, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions about that?
We should finish the presentation, and
Yeah.
we do have a trustee.
One year as mentioned, the Westchester County Sewer Streets project, it carries 82 million gallons of sewage. So that's one of the reasons why we want to stay away from it. We do know roughly where it is, but it's a reinforced concrete pipe. And it was built during the era they called WPA. That's when it was before Harvard, they created it with the organization. It was from down to the Yonkers pump station. So we damaged that line, it put the sewage across the river every year. So that's what it was as well. You move down to Iron Driving. Okay, thanks.
Oh, so my name is Randy, I'm an engineer.
Please talking to the microphone, because
Sure. And so I've been working on this for about 20 years, okay? So I'm pretty familiar with the area. And I've done a lot of work along the Steve Smith, that's a really, it's a very interesting situation to deal with. So, they went over it, we went over the issues with driving piles. To tell you there's a county trucks that are down there, okay? So, I'm going back in time in history, so it was Dixie Inn, this many years ago, and then it became, Louisville Garage. And then really over the years, okay, he decided to fill it back. And he did probably 2 or 3 of them, so and bring back a lot of surveyor commission in this area. I had New York State DOT, original aerial photography that was done in 1962. Okay, and then we had another survey done by Riley, and then goes up the survey. Okay, we did some aerial photography. So I know how the field came in, the evidence, okay, that it came in. And so they started in the 70s, so they killed it. And they filled over the county trestle. Okay, so it's way down there, it's like 30 feet down. So, what we're gonna do is, from an engineering standpoint, I expect to talk to Anthony Oliver yesterday. We're gonna pull all of it, fill out, okay, because we don't know what it is. We have warrants, it's good, it's solid, okay, we've done some analysis, it's stable. As it is now, but you can't put houses on it, and you can't put parking areas, so we're gonna pull, fill out, okay? But down to the original grade, okay, which the soils were all very strong. The replacement tills, okay, very, very strong. And so we're gonna pull it all out, then so you have good soil just about where it is now. Okay? And then we gotta fill, so we'll fill out down as deep as we can, all right? And we're gonna start from the south, go to the north. The issue with the north, okay, is that the fill is deeper, okay? It's about 30 feet down, okay, where over here is about 18 feet down. So you're gonna have to work progressively this way, and then there's some kind of special treatments. Also, it rules down to the content below, okay? And that's fairly manicured, so we're gonna do that, so that's the challenge in that area. That's basically it. They have to bring in, all right, so we have an easement. We created an easement to get to the house, which is 29 Livingston, to get to the north, because he owned it. And we wanted access to put a parking lot in that. So an easement was created, so he has a 10-foot access easement. So eventually, build this, we're gonna have to give that house a way out. It's gonna have a way in and a way out. And you're gonna have a 2-lane driveway. And have a curb between the two, the announceable curb. Well, fire truck can drive over it. And depending to the whole area. You gotta bring in sewer water communications. You gotta bring in sewer water and communications and electricity. So we're gonna have to be, we're gonna create a subdivision. There's gonna be individual lots, okay? And there's gonna be easements, so all the utility buildings that have come down all the way probably to the end of the road. So that's what, sanitary sewer. We believe that we may wind up putting a pump system in. So you have a lot of utilities considered. Like, to feed each house, to move the main lines in. So that's an overview of what we're gonna do. We're going to retain walls. It's take what we fill out, build a retaining wall system, fill it, okay, and we have 2 tiers. One will be about 10 feet high. The other one will be about 8. Okay. That's it. So I'm sure
Those on the plan, those 2 retaining wall locations, or can you see them?
yeah, you know,
I know, I saw an older plan when I worked with it.
okay.
Now it's,
That's not clear. It's hard, so there's gonna be a here. Okay, then a bench. There's a landscape bench. So all this is coming out, then the first wall. Hold up. Geogrids. Makes a, assuming first of what it does is make that soil. Probably stronger than the soil that's down below, much stronger. And then,
We need the microphone because it's being recorded. Thanks.
so that's how you're gonna do it. You're gonna make a big plateau, then you can do combinations on top of it. Interesting way to do it.
I think for the sake of clarity,
Mhm.
the details taken off so you can see them.
Yeah.
We have a more detailed plan. Do you want to show them your different plans?
If you have time, you can, but, basically what you're gonna have on the south side is a retaining wall. Okay? Because we're making a plateau. Yeah. Plateau, so you can put all the houses, the backs of the fronts will be down at the same grade as the entrances to the ones in the rear. Plateau. And, again, where the black box is, it fills deeper. Slope drops way down to the condo below. So it's a challenge, but it can be done.
And there are some.
can I say a clarifying point about this fill question? So the piling was discounted because of the quality of the fill. But you said you were gonna remove the fill and replace it.
Yeah.
So does that reintroduce the possibility of the pilings if you're replacing the fill? I mean, which one?
That's not a good way to do it. That's not a good geotechnical solution. When you build this up, this soil is gonna be geogrids. You've seen, you take it on the Tennessee walls, especially, and it's gonna have the grids in there. And, so the other thing is really not a good idea to count the miles all the way down. You have to go down,
You would have to use a pile system, you could use another foundation system, if you're gonna build this new plateau with a new soil. I think my question is, are you gonna go all the way south to north with this new fill?
Yes.
On, held by new retaining wall?
Yes, it's pretty quick.
Yeah, please,
New fill is not new fill, it's a site fill that's going to be processed on site.
okay,
So.
and that site full of boulders and full of.
Right, so we'll downsize all that, screen it out, we're material down here. Your material, yeah, but we're using everything. That's gonna help us prevent, from having to truck hook the site.
Yeah.
And keep everything contained. So we're not importing film to use it in explaining what we consider not the best film. We're gonna process that with the best film to make it better. Good. Answer your question?
Yes,
Can I ask the planning board what it is that we should be considering as the board of trustees at this juncture? Because I don't know anything about Bill, or do you want me to enter that or more?
Did you finish your presentation?
Yeah.
As far as you're concerned? No, but.
Christina, I have, but I did go through it quickly, so I could always go back. I know that, part of the Paul presentation was here in Shine, he had, just looked at the views across from the site to the other side of the river. So, you know, I looked at ways to lay out the units for the community. Just looking at the architecture. So I had a few schemes in the presentation, but when I looked at trying to improve that view that we all seem to be interested in increasing, you know, from the southeast corner, I had to push these units in the rear up, and that creates a problem.
Why don't we go to that scheme, like what scheme do you think is the one that is? One of your schemes is the strongest in terms of that views, the open view shed from that point.
On the corner.
I think we should look at your drawings, I just think that they're easy there.
Okay.
not necessarily in totality, what is the, you know, if you're looking at a site and you're entertaining a number of different schemes, given this kind of departure point, which one offers the most, you know, for this view corridor question? And does that align with the site plan?
Because the main question that we're talking about is view corridor, trying to get the best view corridor, considering the
That's
constraints
the
of the project.
biggest issue.
It's been hard to proceed to any further step until we nail down the location of the structures.
Right.
And,
There's only so many locations that the structures can go.
well, there's this question about the unbuildable portion, right? So we've gone over some I sent you today, but, there's a, well, if you push all the buildings, if you went 5 and 4 and you push them all the way north, you actually end up with a very nice view, shed. I actually drew up, you know, some line on there and showed you what it would be. Now, the problem or the position of the applicant is that that portion, that north portion of the lower area is either not buildable or not easy to build on. So our position has been, well, if it's just a little more expensive to build there, it's in the interest of the village to have this gateway, you know, this is the southern gateway of downtown, to have a view there like there used to be when Rudy's was there. And not just block it off completely, which is kind of what this is gonna do no matter what, you know, they've Christina's done a nice job of moving things around here and there, but really you're just gonna have these tiny little narrow view corridors and you know, they're just gonna be a tiny glimpse. So that's where we got stuck, is we have all these code snippets that say, you know, we're supposed to be protecting a valuable view like this. And the applicant has been saying, well, we can't. And that's where we got stuck. Does that make sense?
But in general, for view corridors, is there a, like, calculation that is the basis? Is it just trying to protect as much as possible? That's just like the vague direction.
It appears to suggest so there's no
Map and
yeah,
And I don't know, I mean.
to the maximum extent possible or significant natural features.
The maximum extent possible is what the code says.
That's actually.
There are a number of, you know, sort of clauses that affect that, but yeah, that's kind of generally, there's, I mean, there's a lot of.
It's
there's
the
a
word
heavy
possible
language.
that we're stumbling on,
That's right.
because
Yes.
what we are hoping is possible is what they're saying is not.
Right, and then Anthony had a meeting, so there's
Right.
geotechnical
Should
issues.
we hear from Anthony and then Valerie's on the.
Yeah.
Right?
And we want to follow it.
This down, because Valerie's.
I just want to answer the question, so I think you asked me what was the best scheme. I mean, you can't just decide without taking into consideration these information, unfortunately. We did this scheme because we knew that we had well to the properties, we had more view, we returned them, we had less view from Livingston through the property, but you can push them, we push them together more, so we got rid of that wide, we created this big space here, but the only way we can accomplish that is to move these units more. That's the
Yeah,
challenge.
should I get to the mic? I don't know if it doesn't matter. I think, can you stand that drawing for a second, Kristen? Because I have two questions about it. One is, why isn't it possible for all of the units, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units that you have there, for those to all be, since in your first scheme, they were all party wall buildings, right? They were all, I mean, you had a few places where you had openings, small openings, but they can actually all be party wall, right? So those,
So,
so
but I
those.
still think if you like look at the 5 and 4, no matter how close they get, you know, you get this squeeze here because of the shape of the lot, you know, over here.
Right, but I'm just saying, in terms of opening up that as much as possible. In your scheme, go a slide down in the scheme. If you, I'm gonna say that the lower 3 buildings, because of the geotechnical issues, are pretty much as far north as they can go until we've done more exploration. Then presumably, if the 5 that are along, street, if they were to be made to be party wall buildings, right, move north. Right, the 5 just put as party wall buildings to the north, then presumably that blue area that you're showing as the open area would be bigger by another 11 feet, right?
Yes, that way, but the also affordable unit here because it's narrower, so we are thinking, you know, how we can reduce it, but you know. I also kind of, I mean, one of the everything is a kind of trade-off, one way or another, because having the space of 18 or so between units also allows light and ventilation and those units, you know, makes them better units, so there's different, you know, if you give up the view for there's a trade to be made.
I have a question. You said they were 23 feet wide?
23.
Right, so in the city, they're usually 19. Is it possible to reduce width of the units and over the 5 units, you would actually gain another unit?
That'd be a good point, and I've seen this from there, but the idea of the 23 feet is really so that the 6 units in the front have 2 car garages and underneath. And you need that's tall, so you subtract the walls, so walls are a foot thick, so you really don't have 21 feet, 21 feet, so. And then units in the back have a single car garage, because next to the entrances. So that's why that dimension was chosen.
Okay.
Anthony?
No, that's right.
Happy her email, then they're at it, so, all right.
Just for the record, Anthony, tell us who you are.
Anthony Oliveri, I engineers, the consultant engineer for the village. Yeah, so I met with, Mr. Petretti and Mr. Sorrentino. And, you know, I can understand the concerns they have. I think all this needs to be documented. We need a concise report, the geotechnical report, to kind of, you know, define that square, you know, and if it could be squeezed of metal. My understanding was the southern view shed was maybe more important to the board. So I was urging that maybe to try to shift some of the units to the north as much as they could. There's a history of slope failure on the adjoining property in that back corner. That area kind of, if you look at the existing grades, it's kind of like, there's a deeper fill that's in there now. There's the existing grades go down in that area. There's more of a plateau in the southern area. So, you know, as an engineer, I can understand their concerns. You know, they probably do a similar thing, if I'm gonna lay this out. At the same time, I'll say nothing's impossible, I always say you can engineer anything. What's the extent of what's practical here for this type of development, so that's the balance, I guess, that you guys are gonna have to decide, but, I think that, like I said, there's legitimate concerns, but we need some documentation, some certification from them. So we can officially agree or disagree on that, and, you know, and I'm sure that they're going to supply that information. So look at that when it comes in.
Is there any decision that we can even conceivably make before we have that information?
Yeah, there's really not an application yet, and they haven't started any secret review, so this was for consensus to see if they wanted to encourage them to maximize the views.
I think, you know, just, you know, from an engineering perspective, I think it makes sense to like kind of stay away from that corner to some respect. The extent of which I think, you know, they're gonna define and we're gonna review that. You know, there's the county trunk line there, which is very deep, and a very steep slope. I think you know, what they're proposing to do to reinforce the underlying soils is more like a layered geogrid type of thing, which I'm not sure you really combine that with trying to do potting there. So there's, you know, there's a lot of concerns there, and, you know, maybe this, like I said, it could be squeezed a little bit. But you know, I'm not gonna, I reserve the right to, you know, review what they're gonna submit first officially, but it's all, you know, legitimate concerns. You know, I think maybe, you know, I don't know, tonight you could kind of balance the view sheds with what could be practical to do on the site. I don't know if there's any balance there to make or not, you know, but like I said, it'll be seen with the documentation.
Okay, thank you. Valerie, let's hear from Valerie.
Sure. So I think the real key here is that we haven't really begun any sort of process in terms of the environmental review and also the referrals out to the county and other the involved agencies. You know, so Metro North and, you know, the county are probably going to have some comments on this project, but you know, we can't really start that until there is a site plan for which I'm going to say the planning board and village board sort of more or less gives a little bit of a blessing to be able to start that process. So we're a little bit in the waiting, you know, a little bit in a waiting game for that. And then once that gets finalized, or at least the site plan, that we can start moving forward in terms of the environmental review process and also referrals, you know, Dan Romer and I are going to sit down and kind of run through to see if there's any ZBA variances or anything like that are necessary as well. So I think it really becomes imperative as much as possible to kind of get to some sort of layout that everybody feels comfortable with to be able to begin the review process.
Valerie, can I ask you a question? Similar to the question I tried to ask Anthony, is the site plan that we are being asked to give direction on possible to create until there has been this further engineering review of the black box?
So I think you could potentially move forward with a concept plan, right? And then that's where we start dealing with some of the engineering aspects, right? Is that plan possible? If it's not possible, we have to shift the site plan. I think that the hardest thing is to say, you know, there can only be one solution to this particular application. I would recommend kind of going with a general concept, and as we evolve these, you know, as the engineering gets undertaken, as well as, you know, we get feedback from the other agencies, at that point in time, we'll have a better sense of what is possible on that site and what needs to be adjusted on that site.
Okay, questions for Valerie?
Yeah, Valerie, my concern is just that the applicant invests money in engineering and design work when we don't know where the buildings are going to be sited. And if the goal is to look at the engineering and shift the buildings as far north as possible to generate the maximum view shed, then, you know, we don't know where the buildings are gonna go yet, until that engineering work is done.
Right, and if that is ultimately the final decision from the board, that you want to see everything shifted as north as possible, then I think we have to wait for the engineering, you know, to get done. But keep in mind, though, that even then, if for some reason there is a plan associated with it, there still might be input from like the fire department in Westchester County, also, you know, Metro North, and then, you know, maybe the ZBA, depending upon if there's a zoning variance that's necessary. So, you know, these are all different, I guess, other components that, you know, are what ifs, and we don't know that information yet. And so, you know, you could go down that track. It's just going to potentially take a little bit longer, and you're potentially also going to have some additional revisions to the site plan.
So here, maybe we're gonna do this, we just hear what the conflict is, so that we can talk about this more, like what you said, that this siting is part of it. You talked a little bit about combining buildings, someone asked a question about reducing width, but like all those seem like, well, aside from the first one, they seem legitimate planning board issues, so is there some other thing that we should all be talking about? Because we're here, it takes a while to get these joint meetings. So it would be good for us to provide our feedback in the way that Valerie explained, in the sense that if the question is about pushing the buildings to the west further north, or some other, there's another issue, let's talk about that now, let's opine on that as a board, and then we just rely on the planning board, village planner, engineer to work out those issues of feasibility, you know, weighing feasibility versus practice, you know, what's practice, what do they practically do, and what's reasonable to expect them to be able to engineer.
I'd like to hear from the BOT how valuable this view is. I mean, in the last go around, when it was previously proposed for this site, I started in the Battery and came all the way up Broadway, looking to see if I could see Hudson River from Broadway. There's a few little peekaboo views in the Bronx. There's a couple of nice little peekaboo views in Yonkers. When you get to that intersection, when I get to this intersection in Dobbs Ferry, there it was. There was, you know, you could look way up the Hudson. And it's spectacular. So, but does the BOT think it's valuable? You know, how valuable is it?
I think that the, you know, after the new comprehensive plan, our old comprehensive plan identified that as extraordinarily valuable. And so, you know, whatever my personal feelings about it, I think it's, you know, we have an obligation to follow that document's intent. I think it's also, there's also some weighing of, you know, the applicant's right to develop their property. And so I think we want to try to explore widening that as much as possible so that you keep that southern view, which seems to be the key one. I think that the view between the buildings is negligible, if at all. I think there's going to end up being landscape, and, you know, you're going to hit the corners of the buildings in the back, so you're not going to see much between buildings. And then the other one is really down a driveway. And again, it's more limited. So I think the answer to the question is, I think you're on the right path, and I support it. I just want to find a way forward.
Well, let's hear from the other trustees as well. So Laura, what do you look for this?
Well, I know that the views are valuable in the comprehensive plan, but I know we also have goals of adding more housing, particularly in the downtown. And so you know, that's an important goal as well. So we want to make it, like you said, not deter the owner from developing more housing there. It's my opinion.
Matt, what do you think?
I think that view is incredibly important, and for the, you know, I don't want to just echo what Steve said, but it is the first place you encounter the amazing charm of Dobbs Ferry when you are coming from the south, right? It is a spectacular view. It was a spectacular view when Moody's was there. Moody's was a very special kind of building to have with that background. Very different from a set of townhouses close to the road. I think that maintaining as much as possible of that view is critical to the identity of what Dobbs Ferry is when you first encounter us.
Christina's.
I'm sure we put Jess back on the screen, so she's in the conversation.
Share.
And unshare.
What are your thoughts, Christine?
I think that maximizing the view that you can see from Broadway versus the view that you can see from Livingston at the top, would be the goal. I think that having the most view there makes even the people who are gonna live in those buildings, like it contributes to their experience of Dobbs Ferry too, coming home, you know, so I think that everybody, including our future residents, want that to be as big as possible, being that whatever we can get in the engineering information to help still move it up. I just, you know, everything Mike said, but also adding that it also benefits them. It's not like this is just us asking the applicant to do it. I think it is on behalf of the people who will live there as well.
Jess, can you read the whole thing?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all committed to, sorry, I'm on like two devices here trying to make this work. I think we're all committed to, you know, increasing dense multifamily housing that is, you know, in character with the downtown, and we're really, you know, as I think we've shared before, excited to see this project coming forward, and don't want to serve as a deterrent, but we do, you know, need to always hold things in balance. And so I think, you know, of course, if we were truly saying, you know, we want to, if the view shed were truly more important than that, then we would, you know, have to curtail the number of units. And I don't think that we're saying that at all. I think we should, I think it's what Anthony was saying, you know, that we need more information about just how big that black box really is and get a little more detail. Seems like a reasonable request. And I'm certainly not an engineer, but I was curious to know, you know, if that's the kind of work that eventually would have to be done anyway, then I'm not sure that it's a huge hardship to ask for us to move that closer up in the process and conduct that work now, knowing that I understand, like, this is not like a site plan approval point, but, you know, we're committed to moving things forward, but we'd rather see that information sooner rather than later so we can make a more informed decision about how to strike that balance in the site plan and in the locations of the units.
This is all way above my pay grade, first of all, so I mean, I feel like it just seems so complicated. I would be like, yeah, no, if it was me, just because of all the issues. And I do think that while we do want to have that beautiful view when you enter Dobbs Ferry, you know, I do think we need housing. We need housing options, and that piece of property has been empty with nothing there. So I don't remember when Woody's left, but it's got to be 15 years or something or more. So it's not like there's anything there, or it's lovely to look at now. So and I think we've had a lot of conversations about different kinds of projects that have come up where people are like, oh, but if you add this story, then I'll lose my view, or this. I just feel like if we're going to move forward and progress, we have to agree that the look of Dobbs Ferry is going to change somewhat, and some of that would mean losing something to gain something else. But I feel like there's so many unanswered questions with this. Like, I don't know why it has to be 9 units. So like, why does it have to be 9? Like, if it was 8 with that, maybe that's the answer. Take out 1 unit and then you'd have a better view, and you'd still have the housing, and you'd still have, so like, to me, whether it's 5 and 4 or 6 and 3, why can't it just be, you know, like 3 and 5 or 4 and 4? And maybe that would also avoid that area. But once again, it's not my expertise. I'm not an architect or an engineer, so.
It would seem to me that we should agree with Jess. If it has to be done anyway, and Anthony is indicating that he wants more information on that, I think if we had a solid information on how big that box is and how how much we can impinge upon it, if at all, that'll be key information to we can make a decision, and so that's what I would do with. What's that, Russ?
I just wanna, in the interest of, I think there's a little bit of a game here where, as Valerie said, they need enough direction to sort of start other steps. So I'm just gonna offer my own opinion and the proposition, which is that even as we wait for them to define exactly the extent of the black box, if we can agree as a group that the scheme that comes closest to getting as much view as possible is the one that has 3 units below as far north as possible, and the balance parallel to the street is my personal preference in terms of their orientation, also as far north as possible. So that at least they have, and then they can come to us with alternatives about like whether or not there is any space between those. But at least we can, I personally feel that at this point, the scheme that's going to be there is going to be some variation of that. And I think it would be good to give them that direction so that they can do the other steps, even as we await, as I said, the final, maybe we'll discover it's all great soil and we can move it all north. But the disposition of the buildings, I feel like is going to be, that scheme that Christina showed is the best of the alternatives that I've seen.
Good man.
Wouldn't be final. We're not giving, as Valerie said, we're not giving final site plan approval because there are a whole bunch of other things that they have to do, but at least we would be giving them direction and a way to move forward. Rather than leaving it, it can be like this way or, I just think
We have to wrap this up, so.
I'll be as quick as I'm capable of being. Rob used some language there that I noted, which was, the 3 in the back and the balance in front. And I don't know if this was intentional or not, but I, like Shari, have no feeling that 9 is a necessary number. And I have no feeling that townhouses are the best way to get density. I know that it's the plan and I'm not against it. But I think that 9 is a lovely number, but if we're gonna sacrifice, a significant amount of the character of Dobbs Ferry, it's a number that needs to go down. I strongly, as you know, believe that we need more density in the downtown and more housing in Dobbs Ferry in general, particularly affordable housing, which most of this is not. And but it doesn't have to be this plan and it doesn't have to be this number.
And the affordable unit is also thinner, right? Yeah, so if there were 2 affordable units on the top, it would make the whole top thinner and be more, more of an argument to side with you.
Not affordable, also thinner and has a 1-car garage instead of a 2-car garage. There are a lot of ways to skin this cat.
Be better, no?
Well, yes, but I'm just saying that, all I'm saying is that there's a lot of ways to skin the cat with putting housing on this lot.
We're trying to sort you right now. I want to do that.
From the perspective of the planning board, are we just messing this up for you guys? Because it seems like we're going in different directions.
Well, you did add a little additional complexity there, but I think one clear thing that we're gonna take away from tonight is that we need, engineering review of that northwest corner.
Which is going to be required as part of the environmental review on the property anyway.
Well, it is, but everything is dependent on it.
And
Where the buildings are sited, where all the plumbing goes, utilities, everything's depending on
Right,
it.
so
Rob disagrees with me, but.
So that's what I wanted to get at. So can we do, Rob has a proposal. I think does the majority feel like we can move towards
What's
Rob?
the opposite proposal or what's not that there?
To me,
No, I don't think they're a conflict. I just kind of concerned about wasting their time and money until we know what they're going to do. Rob doesn't seem to.
This is, one choice would be to go along with Rob's plan. I guess also have them investigate further that box, right? Or we could just say, we don't want to even make that kind of a indication yet, and just let's get the engineering reports finalized, and then we could go, do we need that? Do we need that line? That kind of situation, say, you have that room now. Before you didn't think you did, now you did.
And there's no reason we can't do them simultaneously.
Okay,
So in terms of, if you ask the applicant, we're speculating about what's better for them, maybe they can just tell us. I mean, I personally would, if I was the applicant, I would want to keep this thing moving and, you know, sort of give some general direction and say, we want the planning board to work it out with these constraints, but maybe the applicant would rather have all that information first. Let's hear from them. What do they say?
quickly. We didn't, another meetings because after 5, we required for 1 or 4 meetings. Right, could you address his concern, his answer to his question? You want to restate it, Mike?
Yeah, so we've been speculating about what would keep this moving forward for you all. And we have sort of 2 similar but slightly different approaches. The one is to give some kind of general direction that we want to maximize that southern view corridor. And you are going to work it out with your own engineering. It's going to get reviewed by the village engineer, and that will go to the planning board and village planner, and you'll just proceed. The others, that we get that information first, and you define that area, and then you start that process.
The good thing is the information exists, so I don't have to create it. There was never a reason for us to create any testimonials in there because any plan that we submitted to you guys, that area was always off limits. So from day one, once we found those reports, Paul dug up in his archives. So that information exists, so I think we potentially have applied for this week. So we don't have to go out and make crystal, whichever one we do anyway, because I do not know where Westchester County sewer is. So I think, you know, you're discounting the fact that exists, that sewer exists. So are you saying that you have the information to pass along to Anthony so he can verify or verify the size and the extent of that flat box or better 15 years ago? The previous owner did.
Yes.
Yes, okay, you do have that information.
There's borings that exist.
Okay, so we feel comfortable that you can.
Well, I'm not gonna analyze the boring, there's, right, that needs to be incorporated into a new report.
That information exists.
I imagine it's
Okay, so you prefer, again, towards Mike's point, so could someone answer, I guess the answer is, I probably want direction, but could you just answer, Mike, want to restate it one more time, and we get an answer?
Was my question clear?
It's fair. Okay, so what's the answer?
I'm so confused.
I don't need the answer, so.
I mean, well done about this process is that you having some, leaving this meeting with some direction from the board about, I'm not going to restate Rob's position, but then you, in general, you have an idea that we're looking for this southern view corridor to be maximized to an extent that's reasonable. And that means pushing some way north, right? Because you're gonna have a spectrum of Banff soil, right? It's gonna go from Banff to Worth as you go north. Where is that threshold? I mean, I think that's for us to define, and that's what's gonna define where the three buildings begin, north to south. And so if you know from us that that's our intention, and that's what we'd like to see, you can just proceed and work that out. You're not gonna finalize the site plan for a little bit longer until you work through this information with planning board and with village engineer.
I mean,
Is that reasonable?
there's a physical experience. We had soul family behind the piece of property to the north. And I had engine, straight. So.
I'm happy with that property.
We've given our input, I think that's all we need to do, right? You guys know what we.
Right, so we can just say this, Rob had made a suggestion, the majority of the board in favor of Rob's suggestion. I don't know if Rob has to restate it again, but do you want to very quickly restate it, Rob?
Just that as they do the final, whatever additional information we need at the quote unquote black box, that the scheme that seemed closest to the general direction was the scheme that moved the units as far north as possible, and reduced the number of units on the lower level since you'll be looking at those buildings as well, even if you get the view corridors, that is maybe have that be the smaller number of units and the larger number of units. Well,
Okay, so it's the majority, I guess I could do it this way.
Yeah, right.
The majority of the board feel that's appropriate action that we should be taking. If you do feel that way, raise your hand.
As long as we're not saying that has to be 9
That
units.
has to be right.
Okay.
Okay, so that's in direction. All right, thank you very much. Thank you guys. We appreciate it. Motion to recognize. Okay. So motion to close tonight's board of